These are two questions you should ask before following any non-Protestant influencers on YouTube and other social media platforms. Hey everyone, welcome to the Protestant Affirmation. Thanks for being here. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I'd really appreciate it. This channel is still relatively small. I haven't made as much content as I would have liked to have made over the past couple years. But then, this originally started out as kind of a general Christian apologetics page or channel. So if you haven't already subscribed, there's going to be a lot more specifically Protestant apologetic stuff coming out soon. I'm trying to get into a better habit of getting more videos out more quickly. But which kind of leads to the topic of this video, actually. So, there's a lot of Christian influencers on YouTube and other social media platforms. Many of them are coming from Protestantism, like low church Protestantism or evangelicalism. Some of them are converting to other traditions like Catholic or Orthodox. And then you've got some folks who are already Catholic and Orthodox and are making content. Maybe they've been a Catholic all their lives, for example, but they're just now getting into the apologetics area. So they've started like a YouTube channel, for example. So there's a lot of these non-Protestant Christian influencers out there, some of them new, some of them older. But these are a couple questions that I would say it's important to ask before you start following them and really, digesting their content. And the first question is, does Sola Scriptura to you mean that the Bible is the only authority for Protestants? So the reason that's an important question is, number one, the answer to that question is no. Sola Scriptura does not mean that the Bible is our only authority as Protestants. It means it's our only infallible authority. And I've made another video about that. You can check that out. I'm not going to get too much in the weeds on that. But the reason this is an important question is because it shows whether or not the person making the video actually understands Protestantism. Whether they really have taken the time to look into what Protestantism actually is and what it means. Because here's the fact. As Protestants, yes, we have other authorities. We have creeds, we have confessions, we have the authorities of our churches. We have church history, we have the patristic writings, the church fathers. So we have other authorities. It's just that as Protestants, and we have our arguments for this, we don't believe that there's any infallible authority except Scripture. However, I've seen on a lot of these channels where people are just getting this wrong over and over again. They're saying that Protestants, it's the Bible only. It's just the Bible and nobody else, private interpretation, all this, and that's simply not true. What they're describing is actually closer to what is sometimes called Sola Scriptura, me and my Bible alone. Sola Scriptura means, yes, the Bible is our only infallible authority, but we look to other sources to guide our interpretation of scriptures as well. And so if somebody's coming into a channel and they're not getting that right, can you really trust the rest of their content? I think that before we go on here to make videos about this or that subject, it's in our best interest to research these subjects first. And I myself have been guilty of not doing that sometimes in the past. Sometimes I haven't researched, a topic before I've spouted off my opinion about it to friends or otherwise. I think we've all been kind of guilty of that. But, it's a good habit to get into before you really research or before you make a video about something, to actually look into it and research it. And the fact is that misrepresenting the doctrine of Sola Scriptura is going to give you an idea of what this person's content is going to be like, and it's probably not going to be a very accurate depiction of Protestantism. Okay, and the second question that you need to ask is, do you consider evangelicals and non-denominational Christians to be Protestants? And this is similar to the other question, but here's the thing about this. It's not as maybe unforgiving as the other question. So the other question, about Sola Scriptura, I think if you get that wrong, that's a pretty bad thing. And it means you really haven't looked into what Protestantism is all about. As far as the question of whether non-denominational and evangelical Christians are Protestants, the answer is definitely no, because they don't have any historical ties to the Protestant Reformation. They've got no creeds, no confessions. Many of their beliefs are kind of a hodgepodge of different denominations. They borrow from one, they borrow from another. So there's no consistency. Many of their rites and beliefs don't mirror the ancient church. There's just no reason to call them Protestants. And the thing is, a lot of these influencers, and particularly Catholics, they just lump evangelicals and non-denominationals into the Protestant camp, and there's no reason for it. There's no basis. And I think one of the reasons, and I'm going to make a video maybe more about this on a topic later. I know Redeemed Zoomer has done some extensive videos about this. I encourage you to check out his content on this. I think that maybe a reason that some people think that evangelicals and non-denominationals are Protestants is because they share some of the beliefs of other Protestants. First of all, that's not entirely true. The lower church traditions of Protestantism and the higher church traditions of Protestantism look at things very differently. Baptists and Lutherans, for example, look at baptism and communion very differently. The non-denominational Christians, their view of baptism and the Lord's Supper tends to mirror the Baptist view, but it definitely does not mirror the Lutheran, Anglican, or Presbyterian views. And so it's not accurate to lump all these groups in together. There are important differences. And I think that it's understandable, though, that a lot of people still, I think they get it wrong, but it's understandable that people still believe that evangelicals and non-denominationals are Protestants. But the reason why you need to ask this question is because it still gives you an idea of where the influencer that you're looking at is coming from, and whether or not they're willing to maybe challenge some of their presuppositions about Protestants. In other words, sure, maybe they believe that evangelicals and non-denominational Christians are Protestants, but are they willing to maybe look at an alternative explanation or an alternative view? So yes, it does kind of give you an idea of where these influencers are coming from, but it also shows you, are they teachable? Are they willing to learn? Are they willing to hear a different viewpoint? Are they willing to maybe, update and adapt their views to a different viewpoint? I know in my life, I haven't always done that, but I've actually learned like the last year or two a little bit more, for example, about Catholics, just talking with Catholic friends and watching some content online. And while I still don't consider myself Catholic and I have a lot of issues with it, I have adapted my view of Catholics based on new information. So I think that if an influencer on YouTube or elsewhere is willing to do that, that's great. If they're not willing to do that, if this is a question that you ask and they say, yes, they're definitely Protestants and I'm not going to hear any conflicting views about that, then again, that kind of tells you where they're coming from and whether or not they're willing to learn and adapt their views to new information. So anyway, these are just a couple quick things I wanted to put out there, a couple questions that I really think we all need to be asking before we follow these people. And I'm not saying that if they get the answer to these questions wrong, that you shouldn't follow them or watch their content, but it will give you a better idea of the lens through which they look at these issues. How do they see the world? How do they view Protestantism versus Catholic versus Eastern Orthodox versus other Christian traditions? So I would say before you subscribe to these other channels and start watching their stuff, just ask these questions, whether it's in the comments or whether you can just search their other content to see how they answer it. Find out where they're coming from. I think it'll help you, view their content through the proper lens. So anyway, thanks for watching this. I appreciate it. You guys have a great day. God bless.